Happy Midlands Gives Day. We're so very thankful to be here. My name is John Scherer, and I'm the Director of Cultural Resources for Historic Columbia. Historic Columbia is a private nonprofit organization dedicated to preserving Columbia and Richland County's cultural heritage and its historic character. We've been around since 1961. You've probably heard of us. Our mission is to support and protect the historical and cultural heritage of Columbia and Richland County through advocacy, education, and preservation. And we're champions for historic preservation. And today, we're joined by two kindred spirits, two friends, two partners, to talk about why historic preservation matters to our community and about how private and public nonprofit entities contribute to this community's communities and region success. So with that, I'll ask my friends and colleagues to introduce themselves.
I'm Jenny Boulware, manager for Main Street, South Carolina, which is a statewide resource for communities seeking to revitalize and manage their historic downtowns. We are a program of the Municipal Association, and we inspire placemaking through asset-based economic development and historic preservation.
I'm Fred Delk. I run a nonprofit called the Columbia Development Corporation. We are 38 years old, so been around for a while, not as long as Historic Columbia, but Columbia Development Corporation works with public-private partnerships to drive development in the city of Columbia. Through public-private partnerships, we've done a lot of historic preservation projects, and then a lot of our projects are related to art and culture. So looking forward to talking about them and some of the partnerships that we've done with Historic Columbia.
Well, thank both of y'all for joining us today. Unique circumstances as we are negotiating this COVID-19 crisis, but we're very thankful to have in place these really deep-seated organizations that are kind of the bedrock in many respects of our cultural and historical heritage here in Columbia, Richland County, really throughout the state of South Carolina. Both of y'all have brought a great deal of expertise to the conversation that we'll have today. And Historic Columbia is very thankful to be partners with you in the past. And we're very thankful to have you as future partners as well. So let's talk a little bit about the impact that historic preservation has on our community and communities for that matter, because we're not monolithic. Jenny, what are your thoughts?
So with Main Street communities, the historic corridor is the true fabric of those communities. The buildings were constructed with local craftsmanship, with the original community members, and so they have a story to tell. If we lose those buildings, we lose that historic fabric, and so we really are working as a unit to encourage adaptively reusing those structures, breathing new life in them, creatively making new spaces for breweries, coffee shops, gathering spaces, hotels. We really are pushing that heavily in our communities, and several communities are finding great value in the tax credit incentives, developing local incentives that encourage recapturing of those structures. And I have a couple examples I'll share a little bit later.
You know, downtowns, Columbia downtown, downtowns anywhere, the older parts of communities are unique to those communities. If you go to a shopping center or a relatively newly developed commercial strip or an old developed commercial strip, one that's 50 years old, you might find a lot of degradation there. If you go to a newer one, you'll find something, you know, whatever the condition it's in. But close your eyes and you may not know which community you're in. When you go to downtown Columbia, it is uniquely downtown Columbia. The Five Points neighborhood, Vista neighborhood, these are things that don't exist anywhere else in the country. And it is the uniqueness of the community. That's what we are really all trying to do. Preserve what is truly different about our community, those buildings of character, historic nature, the things that have made our communities wonderful. the places that people have lived and worked.
I think one of the things for our viewers that's really important to understand is it's not just us three up here. We didn't just wake up one day and say, hey, we want to preserve all of these places because they're significant to us, that we are really the product of homegrown grassroots preservation endeavors on the part of scores of people, hundreds, thousands of people who've come before us in the preceding years. And I think that's very important to really emphasize, because it is the collective power of a community of individuals banding together to support what they believe in that makes our endeavors so successful and so meaningful, at least for me personally.
So South Carolina's Main Street program started in 1983, but we are a spinoff of the national philosophy that started 40 years ago. We celebrate our national anniversary this year. Nationwide, there are over 2,000 Main Street communities. We have 20 in South Carolina. What does that mean? What it means is that Main Street, South Carolina serves as the kind of body that provides support and training and encouragement, and also is a bit of a filtering mechanism for good practices and methodologies to develop downtowns and grow them. So dollar for dollar, when you community, you have a director that manages those projects and programs and leads the strategic planning for the community with vision sessions every year. The community members are part of that process, which helps to filter out some of the ideas. So it's not just a one-man show, just led by the city. You have residents and community members that value that space. So these directors are every day thinking about their downtown communities and how to enrich them, how to develop greater partnerships. Main Street communities are excellent at leveraging. So the partnerships that we have at the state level with Historic Columbia Foundation is tremendous, but translate that to a local community, leveraging those partnerships is critical. When you have a project that you're working on with the arts, make sure you're working with your arts commission, make sure you're working with your high school. Maybe there's an arts teacher that really wants to be a part of that project, and then you're developing that creative space with others in the community from young and old. But dollar for dollar, I'm going to talk about the money side of things. For every dollar of public money that is infused in a downtown community, 26 private dollars are infused. So when you think about return on investment, that leveraging, when people are applying for grants, whether you're a Main Street community organization or you're the Historic Society, leveraging those assets, both human and financial, goes a long way. But again, you have to have somebody that's thinking about that downtown space all the time. So we, at the state level, we're thrilled about the investment that our communities are making to support those directors. It's tremendous.
Jenny, I think you bring up a really good point in terms of leveraging assets. And assets are obviously, they can be dollars and cents, but they also can be the power of intergenerational collaboration. And it's something that for Historic Columbia, it's very meaningful for us in our programming and in our special events, where we have not just one segment of the community represented, but people of all backgrounds, people of all ages, all socioeconomic groups. It's really something that Historic Columbia works to achieve, which is a fully representative cross-section of our community. And I think, Fred, to that point, the Columbia Development Corporation's efforts are kind of broad spectrum. They certainly touch on that as well.
Yeah, they sure do. I am really proud to say that I was 5 or 6 years after the National Main Street program was created. I was one of those Main Street program managers that was hired. So I've been with that program since the very beginning, and that's where I got all of my basic training for this, but the Columbia Development Corporation has originally started working on the Congaree Vista area. When the trains were relocated, the area had the potential for becoming a wasteland. What do you do when the railroad and the trains and the warehouses are going to be empty? What do you do with a neighborhood like that? So the Columbia Development Corporation did the planning, and then eventually, about the time I came to the corporation, we switched over to working with public-private redevelopment. So taking buildings like, most people don't understand, we owned the Blue Marlin restaurant for many, many years and leased it to become the Blue Marlin, renovated the building, and there are just countless buildings like, I love the old North Carolina Mutual building, which was an African-American structure. The Blue Palace Tea Room is what it was known as, is when we took the building with a private partner, partnered together, loaned them a really relatively small amount of money. The Nathaniel Jerome Frederick House was another early project that we did, or even the Big Apple. All of those were African-American history buildings. And then as time went on, projects grew bigger and bigger. We eventually got involved in the Publix grocery store. I don't think people realize Columbia Development Corporation owned 20% of that. And the
that is the former Confederate printing house from 1854.
Yeah, so that was really an amazing thing. A beautiful building on a great corner in downtown Columbia. I was terrified we were going to lose it to fire or something. It had been empty for like 30 years. And so we partnered with a private developer. They were able to bring Publix into the deal. And we've just done that over and over for properties. 701 Whaley is another one that we were involved in, and I can just keep on going through that list. But the way this works is you have to have an agency like ours that has some base money to risk investment, but then you also have to have extraordinary partners, and those are the private partners that are working in Jenny's downtown, revitalizing those towns, and then working with me for sometimes larger projects, sometimes small projects. But it is understanding the resources that your communities have and utilizing them and taking advantage of tax credits and opportunities and creating a good long-term vision for your community.
And in terms of some of the tax credit work, Historic Columbia has been a partner on projects large and small for local entities, both public and private entities. One of the things that we worked very diligently on was for the Center City Partnership endeavor to create a historic commercial district down on Main Street. And that allowed a handful of entrepreneurs the incentives through tax credits to build upon what was the potential for an amazing success story. And in doing that, that of course catalyzed further investment in that area, much like the National Register District did, a couple of decades before in the Vista.
Yeah, that's correct. It's interesting because here is a neighborhood that eventually came to realize that setting up historic preservation guidelines in their neighborhood was going to be fiscally beneficial to the individual property owners. And as soon as that historic district was created along Main Street, like it was in the Vista, when the historic districts are created, residential or commercial, inevitably values go up. People know that the property next door to them, whether it be a house or a commercial building, is going to be appropriately preserved. I've been in this business a long time, and I can tell you, people don't always do the right thing by their property. We dealt with a project many years ago that a group was going to tear down a historic building in downtown Columbia, diagonally across the street from the State House, and replace it with a metal Butler building. these kinds of things do happen, and sometimes you need the regulations to prevent them from happening, and then you need the partnerships and the incentives that the government has put together to help create and maintain the character of your communities.
Jenny, one of the things that I think is key to our work at Historic Columbia, and certainly Fred's work and yours, is obviously getting the word out, educating the public as to the benefits culturally as well as financially of historic preservation. And to that end, what are some of the things that you've done and your partners have done to kind of get the story out there, get the information, get the facts, as it were?
Well, we recognized with our programs, our directors at that local level are inundated with lots of other activities. They're putting on special events every season. They're writing grants. They're hosting public input sessions. And so we recognized that economic development was an area that we should be helping to package and explain those incentives in a way that could be easily distributed and handed out by those directors to their potential partners in the community. And so what we did is we worked with a local attorney in Columbia and had several partners vet the content. In fact, with Historic Columbia, we had some conversations with you guys about this too, but we developed a toolkit, which I don't have on hand, but you can look at our webpage. We have a PDF version of it now. So communities that can't have the physical copy, they can actually download that PDF and send it to investors, maybe somebody that's thinking about purchasing a property. But what we did is we highlighted 5 particular incentives, and on the front, just bullet points as to what each incentive covers and is available for. And then on the back, we have a visual story showing the before and after of a project that has captured those incentives. And again, these types of incentives are hundreds of pages of documents to read and understand. You do need a tax attorney to help guide you through that, but what we wanted to do is help demystify that process and say, look, you can do this in big communities. You can do this in Columbia, but hey, we've also done this in our Main Street communities in Greenwood. We've done it in Clinton. And so trying to broaden the exposure and the awareness was critical for us. So we launched that. And some of the things that we are hoping to expand on in the coming months is telling the story about those buildings and the potential they have for tapping into those tax credits. And we also want to start talking about homeownership and how you can tap into those tax credits as well in these historic communities.
Yeah, homeownership is a big deal, obviously, because people have a personal investment in that. It's something that you work at diligently to create this investment of your time and your resources, and it's really nice to be able to understand that in certain situations that you'll have benefits of rehabilitating historic structures within neighborhoods. I myself live in a historic neighborhood, and it is in the National Register of Historic Places. There's some really wonderful things that are transpiring here in kind of second generation suburb of Columbia, and throughout other second generation suburbs of Columbia. And very proud to say that Historic Columbia has played a role in helping those communities with their work to establish them as historic districts, working with the city of Columbia and so forth. But it's through these partnerships that we're able to accomplish so much more. I want to thank both of y'all for taking time out of your schedule, taking time to share with us some of your experiences respective to your organizations, and also thank you for supporting Historic Columbia in our past endeavors and our future endeavors. We greatly appreciate that. I know that y'all will be helping us today with Midlands Gives. For those who are just tuning in, we've been speaking with Jenny Boulware and Fred Delk, who are supporters of Historic Columbia, who shared with us some of the reasons that they are involved in historic preservation, why they are involved in shaping our community in ways that are beneficial not just to us today, but for future generations. If you want to support Historic Columbia, like I will be doing, consider giving to Midlands Gives. There is an opportunity to do so. You can be a philanthropist at a very, very simple level of $10, starting at $10, but we'd love for you to give more if you can. Midlands Gives is an annual 18-hour online giving challenge and year-round giving platform for local nonprofits. It's powered by Central Carolina Community Foundation, and today is the day. We're very thankful for our past support. We understand that we're operating in different circumstances today as we have been in prior years, but we know that this will nonetheless be a successful Midlands Give 2020. Thank you all both for your time, and thank you everyone for your contributions.